And so I was covering all of these things, and so I was asked to photograph women in the Texas labor movement in the 30s and 40s in Texas, a subject of which I knew nothing about. But I was interested, and I wanted to do it, and I knew that Russell Lee was here, and that he was one of the most revered documentary photographers on the planet. And so I went over to see him in 1976, and he was as gracious and warm a person as you'd ever want to meet. And he told me who to talk to at the Library of Congress, the National Archives. I went there, I spent 40 hours a week from 8 o'clock in the morning until they kicked me out, looking through thousands of pictures. The Library of Congress, they have the Farm Security Administration photograph. I like to show and tell. This is one of many books on the Farm Security Administration. They were documenting America to show everyone how people in farmers in particular in rural areas were suffering and other things. And so I talked to Russell Lee, and after that I would go over and see him every chance I had anything new to show him. I would take it over there, because although he wasn't very talkative about photography, I mean, in the way that we're used to making a lot of words about stuff. So I'd have to watch his face really closely, and he'd be looking at one of my photographs, and I would just see the emotion cross it or not. How was he reacting to this? And that told me reams. But he finally, in 1979, asked me if I'd like to go to the Missouri Photojournalism Workshop. His old friend Cliff Odom was running it. They brought in the big-time photographers from all over the country. National Geographic, Sports Illustrated, the biggest newspapers, to have us for a week pick a topic and do a photo essay on it, and boy, it was intense. But one day I was coming across the lawn and I saw Cliff Odom, and he stopped me and he said, "Oh, well, I see that Russell Lee has sponsored your, being here." I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, you'll never make any money taking pictures the way Russell Lee did." And he was serious, because really this is about advancing yourself in a career in status quo photography. Careerism in the status quo is what it's all about. If you want to make money, you can't do it Russell Lee's way. Well, that certainly gave me pause. Not that I would abandon what Russell Lee was doing in his point of view, but over the course of the week, in talking to the National Geographic photographers, I remember they had a slideshow. They were making fun of the Chinese, making fun of them because they were riding bicycles. And so I had a big argument with a guy from National Geographic over that. But the next day, I was talking about the U.S. involvement, the direct involvement of the United States in selling opium, flying out of Laos and Cambodia and selling it in Hong Kong. So then I got into a big argument with the executive from Kodak. But then the National Geographic guy comes in and says, "Well, he's right. Actually, yes, the Air Force is flying opium to Hong Kong. I know because I saw it." So the Kodak guy had to shut up and go away. But then when they're having a slideshow of National Geographic things, and they were doing a slideshow of monks, and the guy said, "Here, I'll show you all the stuff National Geographic would not run." Well, it was the monks horsing around doing this and that. It was anything that didn't fit the stereotype. So what he was telling me is, you can do anything you want, but if you take pictures that don't fit the stereotype, they're not going to run. Well, I got back to Austin, and I didn't tell Russell Lee any of this. And he's such a nice guy. And he's not naive, but he's just such a nice guy. I wasn't going to say, "Thank you for all the negative lessons I learned." But I'm going to have nothing to do with the mainstream media. Forget it. So I took pictures for the Texas Observer and the Underground Press. But the other thing is, when I got back from, when I was in Iraq, I was in Baghdad in December when the U.S. bombed it. Bill Clinton bombed Baghdad. I went all over Baghdad, and I took pictures in a lot of hospitals, on the streets. grocery store clerks blown up, grandmothers, children. Nobody would run those pictures. I was sending them from Amman, Jordan to the American Statesman. They would not run them because they didn't fit the stereotype. These weapons are weapons of mass destruction, and we were using them and all over the place. Believe me, they kill indiscriminately. And that wasn't the official story. So I could run them. I could see them run in the underground press, the Fort Worth Star Telegram, the Texas Observer, and weekly newspapers, but not the mainstream press, not my hometown newspaper. I was the only American photographer in Baghdad in December of 1998. So that tells you something. But I know I don't want to talk too long, but I've got to get this other thing in. So what happens? Okay, there's this moment. We had the WPA. You had the Farm Security Administration. They were doing all of this great work and sponsoring all kinds of artists, writers, all over the country. You know, of course, there's the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps, and all of that. And we could do that again. We could do it tomorrow, you know. We could put that money behind people who are going to talk about the struggles of ordinary people. But something happened. At the Museum of Modern Art, you had Edward Steichen. And Edward Steichen did this wonderful book in 1953 in a show. It's called The Family of Man. Family of Man, one of the greatest exhibits. Well, you know, he retired, and then we got John Sarkowski. And John Sarkowski is into formalism and alienation. And he sponsored people like Diane Arbus, Gary Winogrand, people that don't make any sense, and people that, it's what I call sideshow photography. You know, the whole world is like a freak show. And that had a damaging effect on photography all over this country and to this day. You know, that photography is not about explaining the world and bringing us together. I mean, yes, there's lots of alienation out there. Sure there is. But there's also reasons for it, you know. And maybe because on the other side of Russell Lee and the farm security situation, you know, I had this ridiculous thing of Richard Avedon taking pictures of people in the West. It's what I call pseudo-documentary photography, where you turn everything into a freak show. You know, we're going to do something about beekeepers. So they found the weirdest looking guy that was a beekeeper, because they did a casting call for this picture. They picked him because he was bald and tall, then covered him with royal jelly, put bees all over him, and then posed him in an awkward position to make the oddest sort of picture you could find. I mean, what an insult to documentary photography. I mean, you know, of course he's a New York fashion photographer, so what do you expect? And lastly, I would say André Kertész. André Kertész was Henri Cartier-Bresson's older, wiser brother. André Kertész was once asked by a magazine, what book would you give to other photographers for Christmas? Every other photographer they asked said, oh, well, my book, I just published such and such a book. André Kertész said, well, of course, I'd give them Das Kapital. Because you can't photograph the world if you don't understand it. You know, and that would be their textbook. So with that, I'll close off.
Thank you, Alan. I think that's a good reminder that culture, whether it's populist culture or any other type of culture, can be manipulated like that by providing certain bits of information or withholding other bits, as I think is part of what you're suggesting. Good. Well, we're gonna go through the panel here again, and I'll pose another question, which you feel free to ask or answer or not answer, however you'd like to do that. And I did get a little note that in the interest of time, so that we'll have enough time left for Q&A from the audience, that we try to roll through this a little more quickly. So, and Carolyn, I'll start with you. I want to get back to that thing about Willie bringing together rednecks and hippies, because that's kind of part of what Willie is famous for in the Austin music scene and elsewhere. But I think in terms of farm aid, it's very interesting because we typically think of farming folk as more conservative, probably leaning more toward the Republican Party. But it seems that maybe what you guys are doing and what Willie has done shows that there's much more to the picture than that. And I wanted to see what your take is on that.
Well, actually, I'd like to answer your first question now.
What was it? Yeah, what was it? I don't remember. Could you tell me what I said?
No, the first question was, I forget what it was, but it was something about what do farmers have in common with urban workers. And actually, it's all to do with this second question, too. It's all the same thing. And I honestly can't remember the question you just asked me. So
that makes two of us.
But I think what has happened in food and agriculture is kind of this amazing transformation from people feeling distant from their food to feeling much closer, and it has brought farmers and urban people are much closer today than they were, and it's kind of like Willie bringing hippies and rednecks together in a way, because people, I think, it's much more across the board, the interest in food and farming, and some of it is because of the horrors that have been presented to us through corporate controlled agriculture. I mean, people recognize that we have terrible diabetes scandal, and we also have obesity, which Michelle Obama has committed herself to trying to do something about, and it's exactly the same parallel, the rise of those two horrors parallel exactly the rise of the control of corporate concentration in agriculture. So it's something that Willie, being who Willie is, and the other three guys too, John and Neil and Dave, they are in the very best sense of things, they're outlaws, and that is it's not that they say that you can't abide the law, but you got to play outside the law. You have to play the audience that comes to these many concerts. Farm Aid has been around 25 years. We've had, I think, 23 concerts, but they go all the time to these guys' concerts as they go to your concerts. And people are looking for something that is interpreted for them in a very different way than it is in a straightforward way. And they get a feel of how things are possible, and they understand that people can come together in ways that haven't been necessarily handed to them by politics in this country per se. I mean, the experience of going to a concert does dissolve a lot of barriers between people. You find people behaving in very strange ways at concerts. We applaud that. We encourage it, and it does bring about an opportunity for people to feel that they are close to each other. I mean, one of the things that's extraordinary today that's happening in food and agriculture is the rise of urban agriculture. Not just the ability of people to buy food at farmers markets and community-supported agriculture, but also there's people growing foods in cities, which makes people feel much more connected. It doesn't mean that we don't still have the same tremendous problems in the countryside that Farm Aid is dealing with all the time. In our work, our day-to-day work, but I think people have a far greater empathy with farmers, recognize the importance of the family farmer. Family farmer today is seen more as a hero than they were as a victim, and we're looking to them for the ingenuity that we know they have, that we all desperately need. They have the solutions. Willie's always known that. He's always respected people, and the people that are close to the problem have the best solutions, and those are family farmers, and we've always looked to them for the solutions. And I think finally we have something happening that resembles an open door in Washington. You know, at least we can get our foot in that door. We can deliver the petitions in person instead of leaving them, you know, on the sidewalk. And it's a lot better atmosphere right now in terms of being able to work with some people there. So I have no idea what your question was, but that's where I was rambling to. So take it away.
Thank you, Carolyn. No, that makes perfect sense. Thank you for that.